Good afternoon, everyone. They close the door, which I imagine means we should start, even though I think a lot of people will come as we go through the session. So my name is Matthew Genesini. I'm the director of an organization called the Microinsurance Network, which is a platform that brings together organizations looking to promote and develop inclusive insurance solutions for vulnerable populations. And today, what we're going to do in this session, we are going to talk about remittances. And actually, the title of this session is called "Protecting Migrant Workers: Insurance Solutions for Remittance Stability." I would have changed the title. I would have just kept remittance-linked insurance, because having insurance just for stability of remittances is only one of the solutions. Insurance can provide a lot more solutions when linked to remittances. And the objective of today, of this discussion group panel, is we're going to talk about the challenges and opportunities that exist when you combine remittances with insurance. And these are two financial services that tend to not get the as much limelight as credit or savings, which is funny for me, because I think the potential with these financial services is really phenomenal, and probably more important than some of the maybe credit as well. We're also going to talk about some of the innovative solutions. So innovative solutions that have managed to put in place products that are linking remittances with different insurance products, and talk about how they were put in place, how they are promoted, how they're sold, and how it works. And the other thing that we want to talk about as well is just how important it is to ensure when implementing projects like this, you can really increase the resilience of not only the migrant workers who are in the host country, but also provide insurance to those family members who are back home. So really, the kind of having this double hat of trying to improve the resilience of both parties. And with us today, we have a great panel. We've got three experts, and I'm really happy to have one special guest with us as well. And while special guests, it's not very often that at these events we have the opportunity to hear from someone who's actually experiencing the challenges that we're discussing. And with us today, we've got Patrick, who is from Uganda. Patrick, do you want to just say a couple of words just to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patrick, and I'm coming from Uganda. It's in the East Africa, and I'm so happy that I met some of the Ugandans here. It was really amazing for me, because when I came here last year in February, it took me 10 months to meet another one Ugandan in the country. And even at the ministry where I went, they were like, "You're from Uganda? Why and how?" They used to ask like, "Komo, Pukwa," and I was like, "I'm from Uganda, it's a country." And some people were like, "Rwanda," the sound of Uganda. And I'm 29. I came here in Luxembourg last year in February, seeking for asylum. I'm right now in the procedure, and I finished my interview, and I'm waiting for the response from the ministry. And I live in Kishberg. I'm a student at EHTL, that's in Dietrich. And right now I'm doing apprentissage with one restaurant in Luxembourg. I think it's one of the...
Which one?
Shishi restaurant.
Chichi's.
Yeah,
we all know
with
Chichi.
Lebanese and Syrian menu. And what can I say?
Well, maybe just hold it there, because we're going to talk about your journey, how you've come here in a little bit. But let me just introduce the other speakers. So we've got Marjo. Marjo works for AXA Essentials. Marjo, do you want to introduce yourself and just briefly tell us what AXA Essentials does?
Sure, with pleasure. And thank you very much for having us on this panel. Very happy to be speaking on an insurance panel, as you pointed out. My name is Marjo. I'm part of the inclusive insurance business unit at AXA, which is a very strong part of the corporate strategy of AXA for the new strategy called Unlock the Future. It's really, our mandate is really to work through the AXA businesses and entities in emerging market, but also in European markets, to bring insurance products to population that usually have no access to insurance or less access to insurance. And so we work across 14 countries. And the team has been working on this strategy for around 7 years. And we are now covering around 14 million clients every year with insurance product. And as you know, coming from the microinsurance network, there's only around 12% of the population that have access to insurance products in emerging markets. So we're talking about a very important need and market opportunity, of course, for the insurance industry.
Thank you, Marjo. We'll come to you afterwards, talking about some of the projects that have been, or products that have been put in place by AXA. Next, we got Asma, who works for an organization called A2II. Do you want to explain a little bit, introduce yourself and explain a little bit what A2II does?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is, thank you for the invitation. My name is Asma Jabri. I'm an advisor within A2II, which is with access to insurance initiative. This is a global organization who supports regulators and supervisors in the promotion of inclusive insurance. In fact, A2II is the implementation arm of IIES, the International Association of Insurance Supervisors. And we work on different topics such as climate risk, gender issues, and fundamentals of inclusive insurance.
Thank you. And what we'll talk about later is how regulation is really one of the major challenges when trying to implement projects that are linking insurance with remittances. And last but not least, Pranav, do you want to, for those that may not know you, do you want to introduce yourself and the insurance?
Certainly. Thanks, Matt. So I work for the International Labour Organization in the division that focuses on improving access to finance, which is called the ILO Social Finance and Impact Insurance. Our focus is on creating impact through insurance. And if I am to say my one-line job profile is to create more AXA emerging markets. We want to work with more insurance service providers, insurance associations, technology service providers, NGOs, MFIs, basically to increase both the width and the depth of inclusive insurance. And we approach it from essentially two sides. One, how can it create more client value? So which is the demand side? How do clients perceive insurance? What are the issues that they face? How to increase trust and things of those types? But also on the supply side, on how to create a sustainable, viable business model for insurers to undertake inclusive insurance activities. So what are the tools required? How can technology assist? How to deal with low value but large volume of transactions? So we've been working on this for the past, 2008, for the past about 16 years. And we hope to work with many of the people in the room to try and expand these services in the future.
Thanks, Pranav. So before I jump into just the discussions, I thought I'd set the scene a little bit in terms of remittances, just to give you a few numbers out there. This morning, you were given a few numbers in terms of the ODA amount, which essentially is the amount of government funding that is provided in terms of aid. And I think the number that was mentioned was 270, well, the number that I have is $270 billion are given by governments in ODA funding. Now, if you compare that to global remittances, which amounts to over 800 billion, you can see the difference, and you can see the enormous impact that remittances can have in terms of providing income, providing finance for essential needs such as food, such as education, such as healthcare, and it really is one of the most instrumental kind of sources of funding for an enormous amount of people. The other big difference, I think that's worth mentioning between these two two sources of funding is remittances is very direct. It goes directly to the family who can then use those funds. While the ODA funding tends to go through governments, can go through organizations like the ones we're working for. And so it's more indirect. So it just to leverage the fact that remittances has so much potential. And if you can combine remittances with other financial services, whether it's credit, savings, insurance, you can really kind of increase the impact or improve the impact of that financial service. And so that's kind of where what I wanted to do in terms of setting the scene today, and just kind of ensuring that everyone appreciates the importance that remittance has and how we need to kind of leverage on it. But before we go into the discussion, let's talk to Patrick, and just give us an idea of, can you talk us through the journey that you went through in terms of coming here and how you stayed in contact with your family?
Thank you very much. About the journey of coming here, I think that's a common question, like everyone asks in Luxembourg, like, where are you coming from? Why did you choose Luxembourg? And last year when I came here in February, I arrived here on 2nd of February, 2023. And among the questions people were asking me is, how did you come here? Why did you choose this country? And like when I was in the community, I was like, is everyone from the ministry? Because those are some of the questions everyone asks, like in the country. And it was not easy for me to get here, but I made it here. I would say I was lucky to make it here. I traveled from Entebbe, that's our national airport, to Dubai. And then from Dubai to France. I stayed in France from like the whole night. And then up to Luxembourg airport. Yeah, that's how I came. I would say I was perfect, but like that's how I made it here. And I'm in the procedure of receiving asylum. I live in Kishberg in the Batimonte with over 1,100 people. I would say it's a good place for me because it's like the VIP for some of the people. And I'm studying, as I said, as I told you, and it's not that easy, as I would say, but according to what I left back home, according to the situation I was in when I was under the persecution of political staffs, I'm now safe, and I would really thank the government and all the ministries responsible for that. I can even get the chance of sitting over here and I talk to people. Yeah.
And do you send money back home? Do you provide funding for your family back home?
The other thing I would thank the government and the government for is that every month they give us something, they wire something on our accounts, though it's a strict account, that's what I can say. Honor under the organization of Honor, they send us something on our bank cards, but it's not easy to send, to share what we get with our families back home. That's the most difficult thing here. Yeah.
What's so difficult?
I would say I'm representing many, the migrant workers, and of which many of them will not even know that someone represented them, talked about the challenges they face. If you don't have the carte séjour, the national ID of the country, it is not easy to send money back home. The IDs we have as people who are under the procedure, the ID we have or the paper is like the certificate. The information on this paper was provided by us when we were declaring ourselves as asylum seekers. And the address on this paper is just the address of the ministry. So it's not the address of where you stay or where you reside. So if you want to send money, it will be very difficult. When you're sending money, they need your real address, your real name. And for us, we have our names on the papers without the addresses where we reside. So, the other thing with this other application, I would say about Wise, Rio, WordRemit, and Paysen, these are some of the applications we get from friends. What a friend will ask you is, can you provide me your real address and the real name? what you can, like, can you take a picture of your certificate or your ID? When you take a picture, he will say, I don't see your address here. So there is no way you can use this application to send the money. So it's better you can go through other people.
So how do you send money back?
So what we do, it's like through chain. Someone will tell someone and someone will recommend you to someone. You end up sending 100 euros and you pay 10 euros. Imagine 100 euros, you have to pay 10 euros. This 10 euro, you can do something big to your family back home. So sometimes you stay with the money. Like now, I wanted to send money. It's now a month, but I cannot send 400 euros because like to someone it will be like, this is too much for me. I cannot send it under my names. You have to find a way of sending this money. So it's really difficult to send money back home. I hope you have a solution for this.
I look at my panelists. But I mean, it's crazy to think that even just sending money is a real challenge for some people. Maybe just moving on to, does your family have insurance back home? I mean, are you covered here?
Here, like when you talk about insurance, many things come into my head because I know there is a health insurance. In my country, I grew up thinking insurance is about vehicles and like those assets. About health insurance, I came to know about it with rich families. I'm representing not only the poor families, but in our countries, like in Uganda, we have the poor people and we have the ones who are beyond poor. So these people, like the ones who sustain a living only on, they dig, what they cultivate is what they eat. Like they don't have access to money like people deep, like the ones deep in the villages. So explaining someone that insurance, you'll be like, no, this is for only rich people. This is for only government, So if I'm to talk about my family, I would say maybe it will be me and my rich uncles who know about insurance. But actually me in my country, I never even use insurance. Yeah.
That's interesting. Thank you, Patrick, for sharing your story with us. I think it's kind of, just one story of in a million people who are forced or not forced to leave their country and to try and set up home in a new country and send money back. Marjo, I'm going to come to you next. As AXA is a leading insurance company that provides all types of insurance, including, as you said, to low-income segments. Can you share with us how you've managed to successfully leverage remittances with insurance?
Sure. So, the population that we are targeting on low and middle income population, as I said, in emerging market and also in European markets. And we really do that also through partnerships, right? So it's a B2B2C model where we work with organizations that reach the population that we want to target. So that includes financial institutions, banks, microfinance institutions, which is part of the network of e-MFP. And we've also been working with money transfer operators. And I think one of my colleagues put it like this, but it's a huge business opportunity. And I think you gave the numbers and also, as you said, the capacity to send money is an extremely important economic opportunities for a lot of population in emerging markets and in emerging countries. But making it happen and creating the local business model locally is very tricky. And it really goes down to how do you create the capacity to do that in each market. So we've tested different things. There is one product that we've done with AXA Malaysia and a mobile money transfer operator called Merchant Trade. And we've tested different things. So one was, as you mentioned, focusing on ensuring the sender of the money, the person that sent the money, because in a lot of cases, this is also the one that has the means and transfer the means to the family. What's important, and I think you have it in the title of the session, is to ensure the stability of the remittances, right? So one of the first products was, how can you ensure the life of the person sending the remittances, or if he or she has an accident and cannot send the money, In that case, the insurance would help to trigger money sent as a remittances to the family. So there is no drop in the income of the family back home. And one of the models that we tried was to bundle this as part of the transfer. So when you send the money, hopefully less than 10 euros for 100 euros sent, you also get embedded into it an insurance product for a personal accident or a life accident. And that was relatively successful. One of the challenge, of course, is you need a very strong partnership with the money transfer operator to do that, because it's part of the prices of sending the money. But it's really one that allowed to reach scale and touch a lot of population. Then we tried also some opt-in options, so voluntary product for the person sending the money to be able to insure themselves. And that has different level of success. You need a lot of explaining and understanding how the product works, how is it going to really secure the money for the family. This is very important. And you need a very strong marketing sales force as well. And in some cases, the mobile transfer operators are not always the easiest way to do this because it goes very fast. You know, people arrive. The most important is that the transaction happen quickly. And so it's not really always the best point of contact to explain all the mechanisms of insurance. So sometimes we are placing a sales agent or training officers also in the shops, in the mobile, in the money transfer operator shops to be able to explain those products. And another level of the insurance protection that we tried is also again, using the point of contact of the person sending the money. How can you help that person insure the family back home? And in particular for health topics, because in a lot of cases, what we realized is that the person sending the money is going to be asked to send more money at a certain time because of a health shock or a health issue in the family. This is some of the most important out-of-pocket expenses for a family back home. And here, one of the challenges is that you are not allowed by regulation, and I think we'll talk about that later, to insure a family in a particular country with someone paying in sending money. So you need to have organizations that are able to cover both and have maybe partnerships or an agency in each of the countries that receive the money to be able to offer the health insurance in the money where the family is. So that's an example of the complexity of making that happen. And I think this is similar in the transfer and the payment transfer aspect as well, but this is really what impact insurance. And I'll give a last example, which is a partnership that we've done with a bank in Colombia, which is called Banco Union, which is actually a bank that was started by a money transfer operator. And at the time, so their core business was remittances. The core of their clients are coming to that bank for remittances, and they wanted to add additional services and financial services to offer more to their clients. And so we designed a personal accident and medical telemedicine also services for the clients of these banks when they were transforming from money transfer operator to a bank. And that was a good example of a product that took well and had a lot of success and interest from the clients, both for Colombians living abroad and sending money back to Colombia, and also for Venezuelan migrants from Venezuela that were now working in Colombia and also wanting to send back some money. So that's another example of a partnership on that level.
Thanks. There's a lot of information to take in there, a lot of points that I think we can discuss later. I mean, one of the things that I'd like to just highlight here is why remittance is important is because it's an already existing financial transaction that then insurance can just piggyback on that, and therefore you don't need to, if it's an automatic transaction, you don't need to create another transaction. Therefore, you can reduce the costs enormously. The other thing that you mentioned is partnerships. Partnerships is key, and I've been involved in projects where you have the 3, 4 different partners, and if you don't have an aligned objective and you're not aligned in terms of what you want to achieve, the project just won't function. And how do you ensure that alignment of those different partners are aligned?
That's an art, I think, not a science. But I mean, one of the very important elements for us is really to work with organizations that have at the core this access to the population that have, less access to financial services. So we are really working with organizations that wants to reach out to this population and to these regions. And then I think we're also working with organizations that have at core to diversify the type of financial services that they can offer and the value added. I mean, I worked previously on the payment and the digital payments aspect of things. And I think we are at a moment where access to accounts is there. We've made a lot of progress. There are still, pockets and clients that and population that don't have access, but we are also really looking for the products that bring the value added, right? And really help people to manage the shock better, to be more resilient, to have more capacity to control their finance. And I really think that insurance products is one of, the solution for that and the value added that can bring. So we're looking for partners that also have that mindset.
And if you had to choose one model that you thought was the best, which one would it be?
I think what you described, I don't know if it's the best model, but what I understand also is to help explaining also the mechanisms of insurance and help understand why do you pay now for something that might happen, which is, some of the difficulties. I think it's very important to build the trust into how the system works. And so the fact that, as you said, we are bundling the insurance products with an existing transaction with the partners that already have the trust is very important. And so usually what we try to do is really embed it, as I was describing, for example, the fact that you are covered when you make the transfer for a first cover, and you start understanding how it works. You start seeing that you get paid or that people in your community get paid if something happens. And that way, that gives you then the trust to maybe add other coverage and maybe health insurance for your family. But for me, it's a journey of trust that you have to build.
Patrick, does this resonate with you? Is this something that you would be interested in, products like these?
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
And besides that, I think as you said, it will be easy for this information, like to make it easy for us to be sending money back home. I think you can also reach out to places like the foyers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you said you work with different organizations which can reach out to these, and I would recommend one organization for me because this organization helped me to meet up with many people to integrate even here. And regarding this organization, I have my friend here. She's called Patricia, and she's working in this organization on CMEST. And this organization really helped us to integrate in the system. And through this organization, the Batimont where I stay, they made them open to to meeting up new people. And I think if this idea of knowing how of the insurance, if it comes to places like this, because we are many, we are really many. The government may say it's just a minority, but no, we are really many from different countries, and we send money home because we don't have families here. Our families are back home. So I think this will be a great opportunity for every one of us.
I think we'll talk about some of the stuff with Pranav about how we raise awareness of it, how we kind of engage in financial education and so forth. But before we come to that, maybe just one of the challenges we mentioned before was obviously regulation. And Asma, I'm coming to you. I mean, you who works for A2II, you're in contact with regulators probably every day. Can you tell us, take us through the challenges and opportunities, maybe that in particular, because remittances, as was mentioned before, it's often divided between two jurisdictions, and you need to manage that.
Yeah. Indeed, regulation is a complex challenge because remittances crosses different jurisdictions, but regulation is one of many challenges in the broader remittance ecosystem. And this cross-border transaction involves several stakeholders, such as national regulators, global bodies such as Financial Action Task Force, financial institution, insurers, remittance service providers, and other digital operators. But the cross-border nature of the remittances creates a regulatory complexity, such as, for example, the double regulation from the receiver and sender remittance jurisdiction. You've got the licensing, cross-border licensing issues because to operate in different jurisdictions, and each jurisdiction's got its own requirements and processes. Another complex regulatory complexity is the marketing and sale restriction imposed by jurisdiction. Such as you mentioned, some jurisdiction tell insurance how to promote their services. And you've got the definition and legal remit intermediaries. The status of legal intermediaries is different for every jurisdiction. In some countries, you can have an intermediary must obtain a specific license, and in other countries, the intermediary has just to comply with some guidelines. And you've got what you say on the identity, the check of the identity, the know your customer and anti-money laundering and combating financial terrorism requirements. These requirements are for financial institutions to check the identity of the customer and to monitor the activities to prevent the illegal ones. And for example, this regulation around KYC and AML-CFT is different are very restrictive, but they are different in some countries. For example, in the UK, the KYC and AML requirements ask the remittance providers to require the remittance provider to check the identity of both sender and receiver strictly, while the Philippines has a flexible KYC requirements.
And can you take us through the slide that you shared with us in terms of the challenges and opportunities?
Yeah, we've got regulation-faced challenges, and through the included consumer protection and risk management, and in the other end, regulation, for example.
You can
see it there.
Okay. Regulation can represent significant opportunities through the market development through the informal remittances and the digitalization. Because in fact, this complexity I talk about come from the regulatory mandates of consumer protection. But while this mandate is important, it can it can have negative effects by limiting the access to formal remittances and financial services products. In fact, if indeed without careful design, the regulation can have this negative effects and limited the access to formal remittance services. And the real challenge is to find the right balance between protection, ensuring financial stability, promoting market development, and supporting the financial inclusion. You have this aspect, but another aspect we have to consider is the informal remittances. The World Bank estimate that the volume of if the informal remittances flow were recorded, it will increase the formal flow by 50% or more, highlighting how many people are outside the financial system. And by adopting proportional and tailored regulation adjusted on the size, the complexity, and the risk profile of the remittance insurance provider, regulation can promote the financial inclusion and maintain the consumer protection. We have this aspect, and the strategy can help to close the gap between formal and informal channels and support and help people to enter in the regulated financial system. But with this approach, regulator can remove or at least reduce the barrier which discourage the use of formal channels. For example, simplifying by adopting solutions such as simplifying documentation requirements and implementing tiered KYC procedure based on, for example, by basing them on size and risk profile of customers, building trust, as mentioned Marjolaine, through strong consumer protection measure and an efficient conflict resolution mechanism. And at the end, improving accessibility by encouraging innovative distribution models to reach rural and underserved regions. And on the other end, we have the digitalization. Digitalization, it's a new opportunity for the regulation, because regulation can also further promote financial inclusion by supporting digitalization. Actually, regulators can enable innovative digital innovation such as electronic signature or mobile app, and this make it easier for people to access to financial services and remittance-linked insurance products, for example. And additionally, regulator can leverage digital innovation to simplify process or to reduce costs, and this way to make more accessible for user to use this formal remittance channels. But however, while regulators embrace this digital advancement, they have to address specific concerns such as cybersecurity, data protection and privacy, for example, by enabling appropriate framework for cross-border data sharing, and the consumer protection, indeed. Yeah.
So there's a lot of challenges in terms of trying to put it together.
Yeah, in summary, key regulatory challenge related to remittance includes consumer protection and risk management, while market development through informal remittances and digitalization present new opportunities. And this is why it's important for jurisdiction that jurisdiction have implementation support by an international organization who has experience in insurance on vulnerable population such as A2II.
And just my last question, in terms of the regulators, is it on their agenda, this? Is this topic on their agenda? Is it something that they're working on, or is it?
Yeah. In fact, in some countries are in develop initial steps, but there is still no mature framework in place, in fact. However, regulator can leverage best practice and learn lessons from inclusive insurance to support development of remittances-linked insurance regulation. And recognizing these challenges and opportunity help us to look at the regulatory and supervisory tools that can address them. For example, the innovative approach could be a proportionality. I see nothing, in fact. Proportionality in regulation. By defining a lighter regulation for low-risk entities while imposing stricter rules for high-risk ones, for example, and tiered KYC to categorize a customer based on their risk profile and allow different level of requirements for the KYC, regulatory sandboxes to test innovative products in a controlled environment with a relaxed regulation, and risk-based approach regulatory to focus oversight where it's most needed. And at least, as mentioned by Marjolaine, we need a cooperation between the different regulators to share information and to harmonize the regulation.
So, I mean, regulation can really play a role in terms of enabling the environment to promote such innovative products, but can also be a huge barrier in terms of being able to implement these in a way that's kind of abiding by the regulatory means. Pranav, I'm coming to you last but not least, and I do apologize for making you wait until now. But you know, the ILO works both on the supply and demand side of financial services, and specifically insurance. Can you tell us a little bit, you know, what you do in terms of both the demand and supply, and maybe kind of link it to some of the products that we've been talking about?
Thank you. So you're right, we work on both sides, but for us, the concept is slightly broader and larger. The ILO is all about decent work and social justice. So the work that migrant workers can do, whether the migration is voluntary or forced, how can they settle down in the communities that they work with? Also the challenges of the host communities where they settle down. These are all issues that we actually work with and try and resolve many of the issues that have been pointed out in that by taking a very objective view and a non-commercial view to the entire stuff. So for us, we deal with migrant workers on a more holistic fashion in terms of building up their entire financial education knowledge and placing insurance as one of the vital cogs in the entire process. We do believe that it is challenging for a person who has left his or her homeland to settle down in the new place. So what are the facilitative factors that can actually be encouraged and what can actually be brought about? We try and look at that entire process. And therefore, we try and build capacities of money transfer agents, as was mentioned, because it's a very fast transaction. So what are the issues around that? What part of insurance can they highlight while they are doing the transaction to make it simple for them to explain, as well as make it simple for Patrick and his friends to understand the importance as it goes along. We actually have a fairly large project that we work on, which is called Prospects, which essentially, if you decipher, is partnerships for improving prospects for forcibly displaced persons and host communities. So, like I mentioned, the challenges of both the person, because at the end of the day, the objective is that the displaced person is able to settle down and make a decent work living where he or she is. So under this project, we work with a plethora of services, and if I can have the slide, please. So we work on this entire platform of educating the communities on financial services as a whole and the role that insurance can play in those services. So we take a slightly more integrated risk management approach where we talk of savings, we talk of credit, we talk certainly of insurance, both in context of savings back home and savings here. Issues like life insurance, what goes beyond just insuring the life? Should there be a need for repatriation? How can that be facilitated? So can we insure the repatriation costs? Those issues also come into being. We also have this entire program of making microfinance work, which talks about improved performances and product diversification. So how can financial service providers in the host countries improve their products and services to actually cater to migrant populations and serve their interests there. We have an entire financial education package, and we have it in various vernaculars. So what you see on the right are some examples of how we try and simplify them by using a kind of a comic book methodology to explain supposedly complex subjects and at least get them into a more, as we say, business as usual mode. Simple things like how to open a bank account, how can a bank account use that, how can linking a bank account with insurance work well for you. And as you see, this ILO Prospects project is all about financial inclusion of both migrant workers and the communities. There are links below, which when the slides go out, I'm sure colleagues can have a look and peruse as they will. But it's all, like I said, centered around the issue of facilitating transactions, facilitating understanding, and facilitating a process by which money receipts in the home countries can also be done in a seamless and non-problematic manner. Just this morning, we were talking and we were hearing about a colleague not being able to pay insurance premiums for her mother-in-law who is back home in okay, let's not get into it, but basically Kenya, because the mother-in-law has no understanding of it. The person tries to do it from here. When the mother-in-law falls sick, how do you synchronize the timing? So those kind of issues come up quite well. So therefore, kind of if we have to look at it in a summative whole, we think that there are three things that are important that we need to look at, and we are constantly looking at. One is the role of the government. So how can we make this entire process more facilitative? How can we have policies that can enable Patrick to be able to send money and not encounter the challenge that we are? Work with colleagues in A2II to create an ecosystem that can help in delivery of those services. The second important pillar is all around technology. What are the technology interventions that can actually help in increasing volumes of these transactions? And can technology help in formalizing what Asma just mentioned, a 50% value, which is kind of got not recorded? So can we have a kind of an auditable trail that can help in facilitating, which can lead actually to the third pillar? We talked of embedding, we talked of partnerships, which is all around, we call it bundling, on how do we bundle these services to ensure that the person gets insurance, but not only gets it, but understands that there is insurance and how it can work. Because just getting insurance is just the first part of the process. 90% is, should he or she have to claim that insurance? So what happens then? So therefore, this entire issue around education and this entire issue around facilitative work is there. We also try to ensure that the person settles down, and we've been doing on different products. Of course, a lot of the migrant population looks at agriculture as a household because where they settle in, etc. So how do we demystify insurance products for agriculture for the local population? And if you could move on and we could have a look at some, I wouldn't call it a fun product, but some of the work that we do around that. If you
So this is a video, right?
It should play. If you click,
Can we play the video?
I think if you click, it should play, right?
Countries, cities, and communities across the globe are vulnerable to natural calamities like drought, flooding, and irregular rainfall. And for a country of 1.3 billion population, conventional insurance and implementation methods are failing miserably in providing quick and easy relief. Specially designed to provide a cushion in such critical conditions, index insurance is an innovative approach to insurance, paying benefits based on predefined criteria. In catastrophic situations, once a catastrophe reaches beyond its given limit, payouts are made automatically based on data measuring the severity of the situation. Contrary to traditional insurance, index insurance assessment depends on periodic data insights provided by scientific instruments like satellites, weather stations, and rain gauges. And specialist data organizations monitor this constantly. There are also a few jargons that make index insurance easy to understand. Perils covered, natural catastrophes covered under the insurance. Premium, amount to be paid by the insured for covering their risk. Trigger, trigger is a pre-decided intensity level or limit above which the policy will give payouts. Benefit table explains the different levels at which it will pay. Payout, the amount payable in case of a catastrophe event. With simplified documentation, transparency, no subjective enrollments, faster payout settlement, and lower administration cost, the index insurance allows the claim settlement process to be quicker and more objective, thus more purposeful for MFIs.
So the entire idea is to have complex products explained in a simple way that can be adopted as well as adapted to local populations, and therefore have more, I will call it buy-in, but have more adoption in the local population way. You'll hear a lot about parametric insurance, index insurance. That's why I chose this example. And of course, this is in vernaculars and for local populations in the sense that's there. So that's what we are trying to do. So that entire movement, of course, in partnership with the associations and the industry, helps ultimately the beneficiaries and the players who are more interested.
Yeah, I mean, this holistic approach to risk management is something that really resonates with me. I think, we shouldn't see insurance as a silver bullet that's going to solve all problems. We need to combine insurance with other formal risk mitigation services such as savings and credit, but also look at what they're using informally and seeing how you can build on what exists in the context. So it's really important to have this kind of holistic approach to risk management. Marjo, do you recognize some of these things? So you mentioned in one of your projects, you've got a whole team who are going out and trying to promote the insurance and sell the insurance and show the benefits of insurance. So is this something that resonates with you? Do you have the same challenges?
Yeah, no, I think I was noting down your three pillars and the points on fee intervention. I think on the technology aspect, as you mentioned, and then on the value added, I think a lot of it resonates. And to your point also, the education is important because, as you said, I think the claim moment is the moment where insurance becomes also tangible and real to the clients. And that's where you build the trust, and that's where you build the repetition and the adoption. And so these can sound counterintuitive, as an insurance company, but you actually need to focus on the claim and the payment aspect because that's where your impact is, and that's where your adoption is, in particular for simple products. And when you're building that customer journey, so I think this is really resonate very well in terms of why do you have to explain even better your products and the value that it can have for the clients.
And do you have any other examples of innovative ways that you do kind of raise awareness of the, or any of you raise awareness of the different products?
We can open all those comic books that I showed. But no, so of course, edutainment is one example.
We were talking about that yesterday, weren't we?
Sorry?
We were talking about that yesterday.
We talked about it, yes. So edutainment is, of course, one mechanism that is there.
Just very edu, so education, attainment, just in case you didn't get it.
Thank you for demystifying edutainment.
It took me a while to get.
Okay, so edutainment's of course one. Then of course is this entire issue of doing all this in the context for whom it is being done. So if it is microfinance institutions, loan officers who are giving credit to migrant workers, how can you have it in a context that whether you have FAQs for them, do you have objection handling exercise for them? So it's not all about the beneficiaries. It's a lot about the channel itself who has to communicate the message on the ground. So how do you equip them to actually take the message that you're wanting to take on the ground? So to prevent mis-selling, to prevent all that. So therefore, it's important to look at even this capacity building in a more holistic fashion and approach it with a defined objective of having, at the end of the day, not just the beneficiaries who benefit, but also creates value for the channel itself. And when I say value, I mean value not in just terms of getting X% commission, but also creating value in terms of making that, including insurance as a part of their portfolio, that can help them in helping their beneficiary, getting more renewals, as has been mentioned, and therefore becoming a more embedded product in the way they do business itself.
Thanks. I'm just looking at the time. We've got 15 minutes left. I was wondering whether the audience have any questions for the panelists. Yes. Do we have a mic?
Yes.
Or shall I get thanks.
We decided you are closer, huh?
Sorry, I was close.
I am Rutash from Bangladesh. Really, we are working with the migrants worker. We give them training. We ask them to send money through proper banking channel. The government has announced some sort of incentives, like 2 to 3%. If they are sending money through proper banking channel, they get 3% more. So this is one type of incentive. So people are a bit encouraged. But still, the problem is the foreign currency exchange rate in an informal way, this is more high. And their services are better than banks. Within half an hour, they are going to your house and some sort of code, if you can say, they are giving money to your hand. If you go to the bank, you have to wait maybe 1-2 hours and you have to pay conveyance, etc. So that is why still it is not working well. More than 50% people are sending money in this informal way, which is locally called hundi. This is happening. We as organization, microfinance organization, we are maintaining some sort of insurance only we can maintain with our loaning with our members. So if they are seriously sick, we can give them we are giving them medical supports. And if they die, really all their remaining loans they have not to pay any more loans. This is fully repaid. If I say in Bangladesh, still there is not any suitable insurance products by the insurance company. Rather, they are charging more premium because they are going for a risky job in abroad, especially in Middle East. So still migrants workers have to need such a product. We are also working with the Rohingya people. 1.5 million people came from Myanmar to our Cox's Bazar, but still there is no insurance facilities as no facilities of paying premium. We are giving them livelihood supports. Still they are out of any insurance. So thank you.
Does anyone want to react?
Well, I think just one quick reaction, actually. Thank you for highlighting these challenges that remain and therefore that 50% business that was mentioned. I think the big challenge for us is how to be more inclusive in the way we do business. So in the sense, how do we include the existing infrastructure or the existing channels and make it more, I would say, scam-proof or foolproof in that sense of the term. So what are the issues there so that the informal channels don't charge Patrick $10 on every $100 he transfers, but actually charge the 3% or the 4% that you are talking about. So I guess that's where the challenge is, and that's where I think technology can help. That is where stuff like having a proper understanding of the circumstances under which the transfers are being done can help. But you're right, it'll take, these are small steps and it'll take some time for it to become more formalized, so to say.
Thanks. Do I see anybody else's hand? Maybe while people are thinking about questions, just on the digital platform side, you know, what did with AXA, did you put in place, use some digital platforms? Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So that's, I mean, another example I think of something that's the future, but is currently also a bit hybrid in that sense, because we've been experimenting with a lot of digital platforms on access to insurance and selling different insurance platforms. And we have to, I think, really work on a hybrid way with always having some physical touch points as well. I mean, I give one example, which is not on remittance-linked, but we're working with Uber, for example, in Mexico. And it started by insuring, you know, the different passengers and drivers during Uber trips, but then trying to work also to help the drivers get access to vehicle insurance, even in their personal time or if they were working with other providers. And one of the successful methods was to work also in some of the points where the drivers were coming and having people explaining the products, explaining the advantages of being able to access this auto insurance as part of their relationship with Uber and AXA. So that's an example of, you know, the reach that a digital platform can give you, but also the hybrid model that you need to continue to develop to build the sales and the touch. And I think this is something that we are seeing in a lot of different markets, but there is, you know, I think more and more of these partnerships that can be developed.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it yesterday in our panel yesterday about this kind of importance of, you know, having a digital platform, but actually having the physical touch as well, physical connection, and the impact that it has in terms of increasing the take up or increasing the usage.
So just to build up on what you said, there are now examples of different kind of players playing a role in this insurance thing. There's an organization who you know well, ADA, who who did this project with migrant workers from Bangladesh to the Gulf and worked with an insurtech to actually facilitate this entire process. So while you can describe it better, but essentially ADA supported Democrats as an insurtech to help migrant workers from Bangladesh transfer money back home, utilizing technology tools so that the time issue, etc., is all reduced, and perhaps add on more services at the end of the day so that they can facilitate that better.
Yeah.
So we're right. How insurtechs can be utilized and these different players can be used is an important topic.
Yeah, I mean, that project was actually, we learned a lot from that project because we spent 1.5 years working with 2 organizations, one a large remittance house in the UAE and MetLife. And we spent 1.5 years working with them to try and implement this solution. And after 1.5 years, the remittance house pulled out of the project, and then MetLife pulled out. And so after 1.5 years, we had nothing. We'd lost everything. We were back to square one. At which point, AXA came along, and we managed to kind of identify some distribution channels through various kind of digital platforms that linked maids in the UAE and enabled them to start kind of sending money home and insuring themselves. And it's just an example of how important it is to have these partners that we talked about before, to have this alignment of your objectives, because it can really kind of deviate the project. Any other questions? We've still got 7 minutes. Yes. I'll give you mine a bit further back.
Yeah, thank you. Barbara Scola from Mercy Corps. My question is on the role of governments and how do you see governments and public authorities intervene in this space beyond regulation and maybe setting the right incentives? What can they do? What do you see them doing? And what should they be doing?
Who wants to take that? Anyone?
That's much too.
That's why you want to start.
Yeah, but it's beyond the regulation, as you mentioned. But in some countries, governments provide protection, social protection, and is another way for providing assistance, financial inclusion for people, but it's different from our topics of remittances. So
I think maybe one point I wanted to mention is, I mean, you mentioned the parametric and the index-linked insurance, especially for agri-production and crops. In a lot of countries, these schemes are supported by the government with a lot of subsidies to make sure that it remains affordable and available to the clients. And this is an example. I mean, and this is the case also in European market, in the US, developed market for agriculture insurance. So I think this is also an area where actually the government is very active, and also on climate risk and natural disaster. This is also, in a lot of countries organized at the government level with the industry, the insurance industry as part of it. So this is actually also something which is at the core of the insurance industry, I think, in a lot of sections. But what I found interesting, I mean, as I said, I was working on digital payments before, but I think there's also a lot of synergies and work that can be done in bringing different regulators together. I think we've seen that in financial inclusion. How do you bring the communication regulator with the financial inclusion regulator, with the financial system? And I think there's a lot of that also happening between the insurance regulator and the financial sector regulator for some of the objectives that you had in your slide. So this is also, I think, a very important part that needs to happen in that area. But I think governments really had insurance as part of the resilience risk management tools that exist for the populations.
So just a quick add-on to these facts. You heard what Bangladesh government is doing. So they're, in the sense, incentivizing formal remittances. So can insurance be bundled with that? Who's doing it? Philippines. So we had colleagues from the Philippines talking in the morning. So the overseas workers, as they go, insurance is default. It's a part of the entire process, and they have it entire. I mean, overseas workers in Philippines are a fairly large community, and it's kind of recognized as a formal means of working. So the point is that the government can then create an infrastructure that fits in with the needs and insurance. So incentivizing is one way, encouraging and subsidizing perhaps is the other way that the governments can work. But of course, you need a framework within which to do it, and that's where regulation come into play.
It's interesting because the Philippines is in the insurance, in the micro insurance kind of sector, they're one of the pioneers in terms of like putting in place regulation from a very early stage. And now microinsurance in the Philippines is very much a part of the sector. And with the overseas workers, they've also kind of put in place implementation. So yeah, the Philippines are quite a kind of pioneer in these fields.
Bangladesh government has a cell where organizations such as us actually sit with the migrant worker
as well.
Associations to work with that. So the governments are actively producing this. Of course, results will show in the times ahead, but they are seized of the problems as well as the opportunities in that.
One element that I found interesting as well is that in a lot of developed markets or even in emerging markets, you get access to insurance products usually through your work, right? Through your contract and formal work. And so we're seeing, in some of the countries, a large organization have contracts for the high-paid workers, but sometimes not for the temporary or low-wage workers. So that's also an area of how do you bring insurance back into that way of transacting, right, and existing trust relationship. And I think, in a lot of cases for inclusive insurance, it's also how do you replicate that for entrepreneurs? How do you replicate that for self-employed? How do you replicate that for informal workers? So there is also, I think that link to the decent work agenda, which is a really interesting one for bringing the trust in the insurance.
Thanks. Any last questions before we close? or last comments from the panel. Maybe you, Patrick, maybe you can tell us like what you, in your ideal world, what would it be like?
I would just like to thank you for the opportunity to thank the micro insurance network and everyone who managed to make it here. And I think you should educate more. Yeah, like don't leave them immigrant workers. You continue educating them through different languages because we are from different countries. Yeah.
Thanks. So I'm going to close the session, and I'm on time for once. So I'd like to thank Pranav, Asma, Patrick, and Marjo for their participation. Thank you for coming today, and we can continue the conversation if you want later on. But have a nice break. Thank you.